You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography.
Episode 40, The Fear of Missing Out. Well, welcome to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. This is Josh Galicki here, also with Rob. Rob, how are you?
I'm good, Josh. You?
Doing well. Enjoying this weather. It's cooling down, thankfully.
Yeah, it's cooling down, and no, I can't talk about the weather. I've been banned from talking about the weather. From our friend who's just left and gone back to Australia.
That was such a great conversation, by the way, that we had, and that's the previous episode, obviously, episode 39, where we talked with Georgina. It was great to catch up with her, and you obviously had a lot of great time to spend with her when she was over there.
So. Oh, she was over for a couple of weeks, and we just had an absolute blast. So it was just really good fun, and we went to, part of that was we went to Norfolk for 3 days for the Snettisham Spectacular, which is this event where the high tides at certain times of the year push huge flocks of wading birds, or shorebirds as you call them, onto gravel pits, behind, and you get these massive swirling flocks of red knot and oyster catcher and all this sort of stuff. It's just the most amazing thing, and we had a blast doing that. But
I saw some of the photos you shared with me. It looked amazing.
We had so many laughs as well. And, bumped into a couple of people that listen to the podcast as well. So, hi to them, and thanks for putting up for our hijinks in the hide on the morning when the birds didn't perform so well. But anyway, no, it was tremendous fun, and it's something I've wanted to see for a really long time. And it just exceeded expectations. I think you just can't believe it's one of those, you get those life affirming moments sometimes when you sat there and everything is perfect. We had the perfect weather. I am going to talk about the weather. We had the perfect dawn where we had no wind. We had mist rolling in, across the sort of lagoons and gravel pits behind, clear skies with a bit of cloud. It's just the perfect light, the perfect conditions. And then, it's timed certain times of the year where the tide is coming in just as dawn's breaking, and the moment that first enormous flock of birds lifts, and the noise and the atmosphere just made the hairs stand up on the back of my neck, gave me goosebumps, and I almost wanted to cry. It was so good.
Wow.
And it's kind of brought about the subject of this discussion, actually, because I was talking because Georgina and I scoped this place out the evening before, so we knew how everything might work and where the light was going to come from, and because I'd never been there before, and she hasn't. So you know what it's like. I always like to get to at least get a rough idea of what to expect. So do a little bit of research, and I was been saying to her, do you ever get this fear that you get into these moments where you've got these events that don't happen very often, and they're going to be spectacular, or you hope they're going to be spectacular, and if you get all those conditions right, and you always get these perfect moments, that you're going to screw it up. You all of a sudden you're going to be fumbling around your settings, not deciding quite what you're going to do, quite how you're going to shoot it, and then you end up coming away with nothing when you've had this most amazing thing that you should be walking away with some incredible images from. And I said, do you ever get that? And she said, yeah. And actually, the more I talk about it, the more it just transpires that actually quite a lot of us think that way. So I thought, well, why not discuss it on the podcast? Because, if everybody else is kind of feeling that, then let's kick this around for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a common thing across most wildlife photographers, especially I think when it comes to popular spots, such as what you were just saying, where you have these large aggregations of birds. There's so much variability there. There's so many different types of compositions you can get. It's your first time there. And I think also when there's other photographers around too, and you're seeing them set up as you arrive, that adds, I think, to the FOMO, right?
Yeah. I mean, the anticipation builds, doesn't it? And you know, all you can see around you are these bloody great long lenses, and you just, you know, banks and banks of photographers, and you're thinking. The other thing I always think, if you see those things, is how am I going to get something different to everybody else? How are they approaching this? How can I make my work stand out? Because if there are so many people photographing the same thing,
Yeah.
I don't want to be putting out the same stuff that everybody else is. So how can I approach this in a different way? And
Yeah.
you know, that's the way my brain works, and I think that adds, from my point of view, it kind of adds to the pressure I put on myself as well. You know, because you think I must get something different. I don't want to be part of the crowd. I don't want to be just another flock shot, you know, on Instagram. It needs to be something different. And I think, yeah, you add that pressure to yourself.
And you need to trust yourself too. I mean, recently I was doing some fall shooting. I've actually been taking a little bit of a break from wildlife, birds and whatnot. And I was in northern Pennsylvania last week. And northern Pennsylvania, Rob, has one of the highest concentrations, I think, in North America of covered bridges. These are these old wooden covered bridges that were built in 1800s, mid 1800s, late 1800s. But in the fall, they're over these old street, you know, these running streams, fall color. It's the place. It's one of the main things to shoot in addition to waterfalls up there. And I always shoot waterfalls. So I said, I'm going to mix it up this year. I'll do covered bridges. And I came across a good amount of photographers. These are mostly landscape photographers, obviously. And when I show up and I see a photographer set up, and even if, frankly, I think they're in the wrong spot, or I'm like, oh, why are they shooting from that angle? And I don't know if it's like our chimp brain, you know, that social chimp brain that we have where you know, follow the pack and whatnot. You know, there's always something in me that's saying, what does that photographer see that I don't see? Should I go over there and check that out? And, you know, so a lot of it too, I think, is trusting your gut, figuring out what you want to do, and then just go out and make that composition happen and follow, you know, what your thought process is. I see a lot of people who sometimes don't trust their gut or don't want to experiment, and they'll pull into a location, going back to wildlife photography, and especially a lot of bird locations. You'll see a bunch of tripods set up and everyone assumes, oh, something's going on there. I'm going to go set up there. I'm not going to keep driving down the road, or I'm going to, you know, keep looking for my own something that's unique. I'm going to set up where the other 20 photographers are, because whatever they have, it's got to be great. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. It's a struggle. The struggle is real.
Because they must know something I don't.
That's right. That's right. That's immediately what
yeah. And isn't it funny, actually, to your point, if you are somewhere where there aren't a lot of people around, and you've got, you know, a big lens out and you're pointing at something, or isn't it funny how you'll get other photographers just descending on you almost, because it's like, well, what have you got that they haven't? And it is this sort of, well, I can't miss.
FOMO.
Yeah, it's FOMO. It is.
Yeah,
it's classic. But when you're in that sort of Snettisham situation where you've just got so many people who are pointing lenses at all sorts of things, and the opportunities are seemingly endless, because you've got this. I mean, it was all happening that morning. You had this rising sun. Okay, so you look out across the Wash, which is this huge tidal estuary, but the sun actually rises behind you. So so basically the birds would be front lit once the sun's up if you're shooting towards the estuary. But look, the gravel pits that they go and roost on when the tide gets too high and they don't like the water covering their bums, that's why they basically lift off the mud flats, and they go and roost in the gravel pits for a couple of hours while the tide does its thing, and then they fly back again. So they're all flying over your head to and from. But if you look towards the gravel pits from the beach, that's where the sun's coming up behind the gravel pits, and this particular morning you had all this sort of low-lying mist, and it was creating all these lovely colors and textures, and it was just the perfect time. So we've got, do I photograph birds against the rising sun? Do I photograph the birds as they're coming off the Wash with, nicely, front lit with that really nice warm light? Do I do slow shutter? Do I freeze the motion? What do I do? Do I go into the hide around the gravel pit and wait for them all to come in and then photograph those lovely seas of birds that I mean, we've all seen those shots where all you see are the just seas of red knot and with the odd oyster catcher, you know, amongst them. Do I go and do that? You know, you've got so many options that your brain gets slightly confused. And not only that, we had a full moon as well in the sky that birds were flying across of it. So I had all these options. So you go, I don't know quite what to do. And you start panicking. And I think the answer for me on that morning was to say, okay, you can't photograph everything. And if you try, then you're going to end up photographing nothing. So concentrate on one thing. And my thing that morning, for most of it, I did switch it around a little bit, but most of it was slow shutter. And I thought, how can if I photograph it with freezing the motion, I'm going to end up with pretty much the same shot as everybody else. And pretty much all my shots are going to be similar. If I try and do it with slow shutter, it's going to be, every shot is going to be different. They're not all going to work. We know that when you approach it in that way. But I'm going to produce something different. And the other thing I was keen to try and portray was the feeling of energy. Because as I said, when that first flock lifted off, the sound and the whole atmosphere is something is very, very difficult to get across in a still photograph. I mean, you just can't get the sound across, but I wanted to get that energy across in the photo. So that's what I was feeling on that particular morning. And I think that was the technique that I used then to try and make sure that, okay, I might have missed some other shots, but I was never going to get everything. So make sure you get something, concentrate on that one thing. So that was my approach on that particular morning.
Yeah. To your point too, I think when you're in situations like this, that you're there for the first time, or maybe you've been there a couple of times, but it's a destination that you don't shoot at routinely. The light conundrum is always tough because you have a little bit of golden light, which is probably the best light you're going to shoot in all day, whether it's in the morning or the evening. And to your point, Rob, do you shoot front lit? Do you shoot backlit? You know, of course, what type of techniques do you want to choose? So to your point, I agree. You have to make the decision and stick with it. This reminds me, some years ago, I was in the Falklands down near Volunteer Point, and I was there with another photographer friend of mine, Sujinder. First time we were there, and along this beach, Rob, and I think it's a similar situation. The sun was setting, and we had amazing. I mean, like, it was some of the best light we've ever had. I mean, it was absolutely gorgeous. The sun was starting to set. And I was laying on the beach, and I had these Gen 2 penguins jumping out of the water. So what they do is they swim, and then they do this jump, and they jump on the beach.
Yeah.
And they would literally walk right past me, in some cases brushing up against me. And it was so much fun because it's hard to do because it's hard to track them in the water, and you don't know exactly where they're going to jump. So I was just taking thousands and thousands of images of them coming out of the water, and it was amazing. Then I hear my buddies yelling, "Come to the colony, come to the colony. The king penguins are backlit." And I'm like, should I go? And, because the light was only getting better, and I was, honing, my technique on some of these shots. So I got up and I ran to the colony. And by the time I got to the colony, it was a whole new situation, and I got a few shots, but I stretched myself too thin. And, in hindsight, and we had a couple more days, so I spent more time in each location to do that. But it's a challenge because if you're trying to get a little here and a little there, you really can't be a jack of all trades and come away with super, super solid images. So I think you just have to, unfortunately, choose what's right for you and invest your time in that. And you're not going to be able to capture every different composition and take advantage of all these things, especially in these large aggregations of birds and different lighting and everything else. You're just going to have to settle for what you want to settle for, but stick with it, and don't try to run from one location to another. It never works. It just never works.
No, I mean, you can't, if you don't live there or close to there. I mean, I said we met up with David Tipling, who you may remember was on the podcast a while back when we had that discussion about making money from photography.
Yeah.
And I've known David for quite a few years, and I just messaged him when, for some info about Snettisham, and of course I wanted to catch up with him and actually connect him with Georgina as well, because the two of them had never met. So I caught up with him while I was there, and he was saying, well, I've photographed that hundreds of times. And I almost wanted to ask him how many pictures, I didn't, but I should have done, how many pictures he's got from that he's really happy with, because you can keep going back there and all these, because the weather conditions are never ever the same twice.
Yeah.
And this is the point he made, actually. He said, I photographed it so many times. He said, but the birds never do the same thing twice. He said, it's always different. Every single time is different. They behave differently. They do different things at different times. The second morning, for example, we went and we sat in the hide. Georgina and I got in there at, some stupid hour of the morning, and sat there sort of waiting, to get a good spot, and sat there waiting for them to come in. But there was this is another aspect of it, which, isn't as good, but there are so many people that want to see that now. I think the RSPB said there were, because they count the number of people that come in after a certain time. We got there before they started counting, so they didn't count us. But there was something like 900. They counted something like 950 people. So there must have been over 1,000, well over 1,000 people on that stretch of beach. And that may have been the reason the birds didn't, because they have to fly over your head. Because you're all along the beach, and they fly off the mud flats and they fly over your head onto the gravel pits. And that number of people may have been a factor in them in choosing not to come and roost in the gravel pits. Because the flocks would come up. I could see the murmurations of them from the hide coming around. They'd swirl around. They never landed in the gravel pits that morning. So they didn't behave that way. I mean, we had small numbers of them, and I got some nice shots of smaller groups, but we didn't have the thousands of birds that normally congregate on those pits for a couple of hours while the tide is doing its thing. But yeah, so it's always different. But David said it's always different. They always do different things. So you can never count on them one day being the same as the next, because it just won't. And
yeah, to your point on the people too, I wouldn't doubt. I'm wondering, and things pass on genetically through generations. It makes me wonder. I mean, these birds may obviously fear humans. I was reading years ago, genetically passed down from previous generations. I know in the United States in the 1800s, I think they would take torches, and they'd go to the beaches when these birds would be roosting in these huge congregations on the beaches, and they would, show the torches, and I guess it would blind them or hurt their vision, and they would just shoot them and take them to market. And that was a huge foraging issue. Of course, it dramatically reduced a lot of shorebird populations. And this was in addition to the millinery trade with all the terns and herons and, the hats and all this stuff. But it was around that same time. So it makes me wonder, obviously, that, if they are a little bit nervous and there's a lot of people around there, they might have a reason to be nervous over the years. I'm sure that may have happened if it happened in the United States, I'm sure that was happening over there too.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Sorry, I can hear a tawny owl calling out of the window.
Oh, very cool. I have screech owl calling and great horn this time of year now. I've got outside, so yeah, that's neat.
Now, David was saying to me actually that up until reasonably recently, he said sometimes you go there, you'll be there on your own. He said it's only really become a big thing sort of fairly recently. So, but I'm sure that it had an effect. And if it carries on growing the way it is, the popularity of it, then maybe something's going to have to happen. But we'll see. But it was just an amazing experience there. I'll tell you a funny story actually. We went to, I was saying, Georgina and I went to scope it out the evening before. High tide was due at about 8 p.m, so it was going to be dark. And they would still come in at that time. They would probably come in off the wash and roost on the gravel pit in the dark. And I said to Georgina, I said, I've never seen any pictures from that sort of hide and that roosting spot at night. I said, wouldn't it be fun to go and do that if they're going to come in at 8 o'clock? Why don't we just sit in the hide and just see what happens? So we sit there thinking it's, high tide, full moon, all this sort of stuff. We might have enough light. So we sit there, and it's starting to get. And there were some cormorants and a few bits and pieces on the pit. So we photographed a few things as the lights getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And of course, it clouded over, and it just got so dark we couldn't even see a hand in front of our faces in the end. And we just turned around to each other and said, "How dumb are we?" It's just like, who'd have
Did you
thought
have
you need
any?
some light for photography?
Did you have any torches or headlamps with you, or
No, we
no?
didn't. Just our phones. So yeah, it was. It's just like Dumb and Dumber in the hide.
The FOMO was gone about that point, I would
Yeah, the
imagine.
FOMO was gone about that point, but anyway, we had a good laugh about it. The funny thing is, we mentioned it to David, and he said, the next morning when we caught up with him for brunch, and he said, yeah, it's the funny thing was, I tried that. It doesn't work, does it?
How many times have I been in situations where there's been a moon out, or you have moon glow or full moon, and I've never been able to replicate the beauty of that onto an exposure on my camera. I just haven't. I don't know why. Maybe one day I will, but I've had a few situations where I've tried to play around with it with wildlife, just roosting birds. And of course, you're at ISO, who knows what at that point. So whatever you're shooting has to be standing still. And I just can't, there's just something about experiencing it in person. It's hard to transfer that on an exposure. For some reason, I haven't been able to do it yet.
Yeah,
Hopefully
no,
one
it's
day.
really hard, isn't it? I mean, because what do you go for? I mean, the standard thing is a silhouette against the moon, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that light
the
the quality of
it's,
that light, yeah,
yeah.
can be amazing. And that was the whole thought process really behind sitting in the hide and seeing what happened. It sounds stupid, doesn't it? But actually, I think the idea was sound. If we'd had clear skies at that point, and we'd have had some, and the moon had risen at the right time, because I think that was probably part of it as well. It probably hadn't risen at that point, but get the conditions right, I think it's possible.
Yeah.
So not such a stupid idea. It was just,
no, it was worth a try. I mean,
yeah,
you're there, and it's like one of these amazing congregations. So yeah, absolutely. I would have done the same thing, or tried, I should say.
yeah. And the good thing was, we were the only people there, of course.
Yeah.
Everybody else had gone home. So, at that point, you just think, well, if I want to get a shot that nobody else is getting, then I've got to
Everything's going to be original at that point, Rob.
Yeah,
you're in the originality mode.
I tell you, who knew that pitch black images were original?
You could just say it was amazing. You just forgot to take your lens cap off.
Well, yeah. We've all done that. Oh, that is a classic, isn't it? Talking about FOMO.
Yeah. Keep slower in the shutter, and you're like, "What's going on? It's still dark."
Exactly. That's just you feel such an idiot, don't you, when you do that?
I know. I do it all the time. Yeah. Speaking of the moon, it's funny you say that, because I have to say, like, in my backyard here, I've got a western exposure, so I get some amazing sunsets on the water. And like you were saying, everything's always different. The sunset's different. Frankly, everything changes, right? We live in constant change, but the sky will always be different. And I've seen some amazing sunsets out back. But what I actually value more, what I think are prettier, is when the moon sets against the water. And, the moon goes down. Of course, it'll turn like a hazy pink or a red. And, or you'll get a little bit of a strong moon glow when it's a little higher up. It's still blue, and the water is reflective. And you hear the water. I mean, it's to me, that's even more amazing than a sunset. To be able to capture something in that, like what you were trying to do, I think that would be pretty memorable. Rarely do you see unique exposures, I think, when it comes to moon sets or moon glow, outside of just something being silhouetted with the moon, right?
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I mean, lots of people do things with city lights, don't they, and artificial light, but yeah, not a lot with the moon. And actually, with the way ISO is going, the ability for us to be able to do that now.
Yeah,
I mean, I was shooting stuff it would have been the second morning. We were sat in the hide, and obviously as I said, we got there early. And it was cloudy that morning, so the weather had changed. I mean, the first morning was just simply amazing, but the weather wasn't as good the second morning. So it took longer for that light to become usable. But I was shooting stuff at 20,000 ISO, and I've got usable frames from it. those early flocks coming in. Slow shutter, admittedly, but to be honest, if you're trying to shoot sharp at that sort of ISO, it's not going to work, particularly in cloudy conditions. You're probably not going to get anything very usable. But for the slow shutter stuff, run it through denoise in Lightroom, and it's actually, it stands up really well, and you can still push it around a little bit. But you know what it's like when you start getting up to that sort of range, you start
You get
wanting to change
artifacting if too much.
really quickly. But you can, if you've got the basis of a decent image there already, you can still tweak it enough to get something out of it. So I was quite impressed.
That is pretty amazing, actually. I haven't used the denoise. You were saying in Lightroom, right? I typically, whenever I do denoise, I've been using Topaz over the years, but I've played around a little bit with the Lightroom function. But I heard it's great. Actually, I hear it's actually better and better. Yeah,
it's really improved to the point where I've got Topaz as well. I just don't bother using it.
I mean, it's a plugin, so it takes more time, right? So if it works just as good in Lightroom,
I mean, it's because of course, I've got the subscription, so it just gets updated every time, and it's pretty good. We ought to do a podcast on that, actually.
We should,
all the post processing and stuff.
And I'm so outdated with it. I'm so used to, I like routine when it comes to post processing and my tools, that every time there's an update, I don't update it because I like where everything is and I know where everything is. I'm embarrassed to say it, but some of the stuff I've used, I'm working on old software editions, like 5-6 years old, just because I know where everything's at. I need to upgrade and just download the new version.
You need to embrace it
somewhere else.
But things are moving so quickly, aren't they? With AI and all this sort of stuff. It's Georgina and I having this discussion. You've got to keep up with it, and because you might be missing something, Josh. You might get FOMO.
True. I have FOMO over not updating. I do the same thing with my cameras too. Whenever there's firmware updates, it takes me forever to do it just because I'm too lazy to do it.
Yeah, I'm bad at that. I have to say, bad at that, and it's something I need to force myself to be better at, because I know I'm missing stuff.
The camera companies don't market it well. This fixes a glitch with, and it's something so specific. I'm like, what the hell? Whatever, and I just keep shooting.
And the process is so complicated that I can never remember how to do it, from one time to the next. So you have to look it up all over again. And anyway, so that's a lot of time. I just can't be bothered. I just want to go out and photograph things,
That's right. I agree.
But if you got sort of any other sort of tips for dealing with this, I guess it's a sort of anxious feeling, isn't it, when you get into those situations and you don't want to screw it up. I mean, I always tend to think that it's almost like, if you're nervous about something and you're feeling that way, I think that's a good sign, because it keeps you sharp. Yeah. And actually it means you care. So I actually quite like that fear.
Your body's in almost like a sympathetic arousal, that anxiousness, and that's good. I mean, I think as a photographer, mentally, you want to use that energy, and it's kind of a drive, right? I mean, you're hyped up and you're in a situation where you think you're going to get some great photos. So I think it helps you focus, which is great. So I mean, from my perspective, I think you want to tackle it mentally, right? So you want to realize, okay, I'm in a situation and I need to just take my time, be patient, whatever comes my way, I'm going to be able to photograph. I find in these situations where I've always had FOMO, it's always been on group trips, going to a location I've never been. And maybe there's some photographers I know that are on the ground there now, and I'm coming in a day or two later, and they're sending photos to me. You won't believe what we're getting, Josh. Oh my God, we had a lynx take out, blah, blah. And you're seeing back of camera stuff and you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to get there. And that increases the anxiousness. And then when you get there, you have to decide, okay, there's so many different opportunities, things you've never photographed before. You don't want to spread yourself, to my earlier point, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. You want to be focused. You want to have your research done. Or if you don't have your research done and you're not set on a particular location or exactly what image you have pictured in your mind, just let it flow. And when something comes to you, spend time with it. and then you'll know when to walk away. I think we all know if we're in a good situation and we're shooting something that we feel is a worthwhile shoot, we know when it's done. You just know when you've had enough. You're going to get up and walk away. If you get up too soon and you hear other people saying, "Come over here, you got to check this out," or "Let's go down the road, we heard there's another animal or another bird or something," and you walk away and you're like, "I don't know if I should have left that situation." You know it. I mean, you just, it's, I don't even need to tell you how it happens, but I think we all know when it happens and when we feel it.
Yeah. Because I mean, a lot of the best shots that I've seen in competitions and things have been when people have stayed on a little bit longer than everybody else and something has happened, or the lights got a little bit better, or there's just been something that some other people have missed. And it may well be because most people have gone, and then the birds or whatever people have been photographing have got more confiding because of that, and their behavior's changed, or as you say, the lights got a little bit better, or something unexpected has happened. And that happens quite a lot. But do you find that another thing that I try and do, if I'm not just sort of going out and photographing whatever I come across, I don't tend to get that feeling of FOMO because there is nothing that I'm expecting to happen. But if you're in one of those situations where you're expecting something to happen, and then the more research you can do, to your point, the more research you can do before you get there, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So you though you don't know fully what to expect, at least you have an idea of what could happen. But the other thing I like to do as well is I like to start taking pictures early. The stuff that I know I'm not going to keep, it gets my brain into a mode. It gets that sort of repetitive stuff going. You're starting to feel it. Do you know what I mean? And then you slowly build into it rather than just waiting, and then the moment happens, and then all of a sudden you're into it. It's almost like an athlete warming up for a race, perhaps. That's the way I look at it. So I do start taking pictures quite early.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, the other thing to do as well, if you have time, and I've done this before, and it's helped me out a lot. If I'm going to be somewhere for a few days, just taking one day, being casual about it, and scout. And you've heard photographers, especially guides, they'll talk about scouting before a workshop. Take a day, grab a camera, walk around, scout, look at different angles, look at different locations, see where the animals are, what the behavior is. And that will give you enormous amount of information. And even though it might feel like, oh, I'm losing a day of serious shooting, you're really not. You're setting yourself up, I think, for better success in the coming days. And most people, when they travel and they're going to new locations, they're typically not there for just one day. They're there for, a week, or sometimes people go on trips for up to 2 weeks or maybe even longer. So take some time to do some scouting beforehand. Or if you have a guide, ask the guide to show up earlier, and typically they do, or they know that area and they actually can, bring you where they think the best things are going to happen. But stay on something. If something comes across and it's great, stay on it. The people I find that try to stretch themselves too thin, and they walk away with a bunch of decent images, but not some killer images, or I call them the listers, right? Where it's more about, they want to go out and see the diversity and photograph and show a wider breadth of what their experience was during that trip, versus than doing deeper dives and some opportunities that may be better than others. I prefer to go deeper than more shallow, but with more species. I'm not really a listener anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you think about it, and you think about the amount of time that it takes to capture that frame, it's a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
It's a fraction of a second. That's all you need. So to do hours of work before that to get that one decent frame, I think is far more valuable than running around, clicking away, getting thousands of, okay images, mediocre images. I want something better than mediocre. That's always my goal when I do these things. I mean, let's say you've got a trip to somewhere you don't know, so a new location, and you're out there for a week. How many images are you going to be pleased with? How many sort of A-list images would you expect from a trip like that, or would you be happy with coming back from a trip like that?
Yeah. I guess it depends on the amount of what my expectations would be and the amount of experiences. But for instance, Shetland, when we went to Shetland a couple of years ago, I had over 40,000 images. Similarly in the Falklands, when you're around penguins or puffins and seabirds, and there's birds all around you, gannets flying around. So it's easy to just lay the hammer down and take many,
Yeah.
many images. And I find that when you're in situations like that and you're taking all these images, I find even still, I'll walk away from 40,000 images, maybe 50, if that, maybe 25 are really strong. Maybe I process about 50. Would I go up to 100? Probably not. So you could so it's a lot of culling and a lot of time, obviously,
Yeah.
but so
And
the hit
how
rate's always smaller for me because I'm pickier, I guess.
Yeah.
But
And
some are more pickier than me. Maybe they do 10.
I mean, how many out of that would you sort of class as having competition potential, for example?
2 or 3.
There you go.
Maybe.
This is the point I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So for a whole week where you shot 40, I mean, I shot in 3 days at Snettisham, I shot 13,000 frames, I think 13 or 14,000, something like that, which for me is a lot. So from that many frames, even you are saying that 2 or 3 standout images from all of that you'd be happy with. And that's the point. That right there is the point. You need a fraction of a second to get that image out of all that time, and you're looking for 2 or 3. So,
and typically it's about being at the right place at the right time, and having a little bit of foresight helps, especially in a location you've never been in. So scouting, I think, can be, or relying on your guide to scout if they have the ability to do that and back brief you before you start shooting.
Yeah. So it's the research, and it's being, and it's the preparation. I think that's that. I mean, and actually, the more I feel prepared, the less that FOMO is going to get hold of me.
Same.
Because
Same here.
You can never fully anticipate what's going to happen, and you there is an element that you're going to have to react and change plans sometimes as well. But the more prepared you are, I think, for those sorts of situations, the more successful you're going to be, and the less you're going to suffer from that FOMO. Let's change tack a little bit and talk about the unexpected shots, when you get a bit of unexpected action and you miss it. You either miss it, or your autofocus isn't quite on it, or you've just not got the shot because you might have made a mistake. The camera might have just not performed as you would have hoped. You've got the settings wrong. I mean, classic for me is shutter speed might not be fast enough because I was focusing on doing something else, and I wasn't quick enough to change the settings, and I just shot it with whatever settings I had, and they weren't the right thing to be using for the new situation. How much does that now bother you?
Oh, it still bothers me. I can think of one incident right now off the top of I could probably go down a laundry list of incidents, but one that comes to mind, this was a few years ago. It was on a beach, an Arctic beach in northern Alaska. And there was a bait fish run. I think it was Capelin, if I'm pronouncing that right. And it was this rare instance where, I mean, it was June. So every June, it's basically a small bait fish, and they would come and they spawn literally in the sand. And for whatever reason that year, the beach almost looked black, Rob, with the fish. It was just covered with these fish.
Yeah.
They were spawning all over the place. And it was around midnight. The sun was still up because, northern Alaska, light was great. And there were thousands of these kittiwakes. I think they were black-legged kittiwakes. And they were just coming in and picking up the capelin, the bait fish, as they were spawning and eating them. Well, what happened, there was a huge migration of skuas moving through. So there were Pomeran, parasitic, which you would say Arctic skua, we say parasitic Jaeger, and also long-tailed skua. You would say skua, we say Jaegers. So all 3 of the Jaeger species or skuas were there, and they were starting to attack and prey on the kittiwakes. And I had a sequence. I only had one image that came out and focused from it. My problem was at that time I was shooting, I think, with a 1DX because this was some years ago. And I was moving from one shoot to another. And this, we got out and I was so excited to see all of this. I grabbed I had a lot of gear in the van, but I just grabbed what was there to run toward it. And I had a doubler on, a 2x converter. At that point in time, there was only one focus point that you could have.
Oh
You would
God, you
shoot at
remember those?
F8.
Yeah.
And I was at whatever, it must have been 1200 millimeter, I guess, because I think it was a 600. So I was too close for a lot of the action, or whatever was far enough out. The autofocus just couldn't grab it, and I was missing. There were interactions where you would have a parasitic, where you'd have an Arctic skua, a Pomeranian skua, and a kittiwake, just all three battling in the air with ripping the bait fish up. And I mean, it was amazing, the action, and I was missing a lot of the shots. And then I'm like, okay, I got to take this converter off and go back to the van. And it was a little bit of a hike, but I didn't want to miss it, right? So I was torn, do I just keep trying to, and the autofocus wasn't working. Expletives were flying. And I finally got set up. But, and then there was this stream of Sabins gulls that came in. And I don't know if you've ever seen a Sabins gull.
Yeah.
Stunning gull.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Red orbital wing. Yeah, and they were coming in on the action. And but it happened so quickly, at least when the skuas came in. And then they were, there was all these aerial bombardments and everything else. And by the time I got set up, I went to the van and everything else. As quick as they came in, everything kind of died down after that in terms of the aerial battles and stuff. And I still kick myself to this day. I had one good image that was actually published. It was in one of the bird watching magazines because it was so cool. The image I had, it wasn't a great image because there was much better that I missed, but it was a kittiwake flying, and then there was a parasitic nibbling at, I think it's one of its primary wing feathers, and then there was a Pomeranian behind it. Like they're just all lined up in a row, but it was an amazing shoot, and I screwed up because I didn't know what to do. I was almost frozen, right? Because I was like, do I keep shooting or do I run back to the van?
Yeah, when you've got that, I think a big part of it is when you've got a decision to make like that. I mean, even to the point where the action happens so quickly, you couldn't take your converter off in time, perhaps. So then it's, do I just keep shooting this where I know I'm too close and hopefully I'll get something that that works? Or do I take the opportunity to hope that it carries on for a little bit longer, get that converter off and just use the 600?
Yeah. And that was even too much. I should have probably had like 70 to 200. That's how close a lot of that stuff was going on. So I was trying to back up. And then for whatever reason, if I took my converter off, there was all this wet sand and stuff around. And I was so particular about my gear at the time. I just didn't want to shove it in my pocket because it was all kind of other junk and I was just dirty. So yeah, I froze and I just, shot with what I had. And it was a huge mistake.
Yeah. Do you find yourself still doing that or feeling that at times, or has that experience, another experience, made you calmer in those situations?
I've definitely gotten calmer, and I've been to this location actually a few times since over the years. So, but if it happened today, I would have immediately gone back to the van, got everything squared away. And I think it was because I was younger and I was more susceptible. I was with a group, and there's nothing to get you going when you hear other people like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Josh, here comes the Sabins goals. Wait, look over it. And you just have the commentary. And I think it's your brain's trying to process it.
And other people have got the right gear.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true too.
They get, see, that is it's a big thing, isn't it? If other people are getting, and at that time you'd have heard the shutters going as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you know, yeah, exactly. And that used to get me going as well. When I used to hear all this sort of the Gatling guns going, and you're going, oh my God, what am I missing? What am I, they're getting shots, I'm not.
That's a great point, Rob, because back in the before the mirrorless days, where when everybody had the old DSLRs, whenever you would hear that, it's like a Gatling gun with those. Yeah. And I would immediately look, he was like, what's going on? What are they shooting? It's it's almost like a Teams call now for me at work. When you hear that ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
you just think, oh, what's going on? I have PTSD from hearing some of those. And it's normally nothing, usually it's just, oh, okay. There's that golden crowned sparrow over there. Enjoy it, buddy.
See, I mean, it used to bother me. I used to get so upset if I'd missed something, or the worst thing was if, and it still happens, obviously, if the autofocus falls off right at the critical point. It still really gets me. But I've learned to deal with it and go, do you know what? It's kind of nature's way of telling you it's either going to give it to you or it's not, right? And if it's not, it doesn't matter, because there'll be another time when you get something you weren't expecting, and it works.
That's right.
You can't get everything. You can't. And there are other people that will get shots that you don't. You can't be everywhere at once. You just got to concentrate on what you're doing and just do the best you can. And if you screw up or the equipment screws up, oh well, move
it's
on.
not always use your error too. I mean, if you have all these amazing things happen and it's very quick, the birds are moving, your autofocus maybe just doesn't catch up, or you do your best, and especially when you're shooting a dynamic scene like that, there are limitations. Not everything
doesn't know what to focus on sometimes. It's just one of those things. But no, I try not to let it bother me anymore. I mean,
the other situation which happened in that same location, but a different trip a few years later, and this goes to the FOMO point. We were driving down this road in the middle of nowhere. We're in like Arctic Alaska, and we hit a mew gull. Was it a mew gull or was it a glaucus? I think it might have been a mew gull. It just flew in front of the van and hit the grill. So okay, well, so we picked it up. And we were getting ready to set up a camera trap. So we set up a camera trap some ways up, and we were hoping to get, I mean, there's everything there's lynx, wolverine, grizz, all kinds of stuff up there. So we set up the camera trap, and I said, well, I don't know, just put the mute goal in front of the camera. It's the poor thing passed. So, and nature's going to reclaim it. So, it was an accident. So we put it in front of it. So the wing, unfortunately, the bird haunted us after death. So we went back a couple days later after we set up everything, and we were pretty confident something was going to grab it. And when something came to grab it, we were going to get it because we had the motion, everything was set up with the sensors. Well, it must have been windy, and the wind kept, the wind would get under the bird's breast, and the wing kept flapping up like this. Our cameras took thousands and thousands and thousands
of flapping wing.
Yes, yeah. And the last couple exposures that we got, the bird was gone, and everybody's camera, I guess everybody's batteries died. Anyhow, the bird got its revenge after death on us. But we were so excited about this, and we're like, oh, we got to go check these. We should have checked it the next day, and we were all nervous because it was a kind of a hike where we set this thing up and everything else, but we should have checked it. But that whole time we had anxiety around it because we were excited. What's it going to get? And this and that. And well, sure enough, nada.
Yeah. The gull got you back.
It did. Maybe we should have just left it there. I don't know if we violated any rules. If anybody's listening, I'm sorry if we did. We just figured, something was going to pick it up and eat it anyhow. So we might as well try to get it as well.
It's all part of the food chain.
It was a shame when it happened, but yeah.
But what can you do? Nobody means to do these things, and we've all done it, haven't we? We've all killed birds in our cars, unfortunately, and other stuff.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing I ever hit was a deer. I hit a muntjac. I was, I was just coming onto the motorway or the freeway, as you call it, and accelerating down the ramp, and this thing just stepped out in front of me. There's nothing you can do, is there?
Yeah, no.
And I couldn't stop.
I'm always cognizant of, trying to be, but to your point, there's only certain things you can do. When it rains here, in my town, when I try to leave, and this is in the warmer months, obviously, the road is loaded with toads and frogs, and everything comes out. And I'm trying to. People hate me because I'm trying to go slow and I'm swerving around because they're all over the road, and I don't want to kill anything. I feel bad. I feel bad. Eating meat these days. Even if I get a burger, frankly, I feel bad. So I'm not going to willingly kill anything. And it's a difficult thing. It really is. You always,
Yeah.
you try to be aware, but you can't prevent it. Unfortunately, something eventually is
No,
going to happen.
you can't. And of course, I spend however many nights of the year.
Oh, Toad Patrol.
Toad
Yeah.
Patrol. Yeah,
You
doing
would
that
be
thing.
busy here. I tell you.
Oh, there's nothing worse than seeing, a gravid female, and then might have a male on its back, might not, but you can see that, and a car's coming, and you can think, oh, I can get there in time, I can stop this thing, but you can't put yourself in too much danger. And then the car runs over the thing, and the spawn goes over the road, and you just think, oh God, that's the next generation right there, just all over the road. And that's the thing that upsets me most. I mean, I don't like anything being killed, but I hate to say it, but the males are more expendable really than it's the females that are the prize. You want to try and try and protect as many of those as you can. But at times, honestly, there's only certain nights of the year, and it only happens a few times. And some years it doesn't happen at all. Yeah, you get a mild, wet night at the right time, and we've had, I think one night we had over 500 or something. I think was it 500 or was it more than that? I don't know. Wow. It was a lot. It was a lot. In a very short space of time. I think it was about 550 or something like that we counted. That's our record night.
Jeez.
But it's you just fill in these buckets, and
well, it makes you wonder too. I mean, when you look at like the percentages of wildlife that are still on this planet vis-a-vis the early 70s, when you see these huge declines, I mean, there's a couple things: cars, windows, feral cats. There's just a few things. If you took them out of the equation, it would have a dramatic impact. Obviously, they're not going to come out of the equation, and they're here to stay. But it's amazing how some of these things have just decimated wildlife across across the globe, the United States, especially with bird strikes, running things over, and feral cats, of course, too. I mean, it's insane, and not just birds, all other types of wildlife. They decimate.
Yeah, I mean, they have such an impact. I mean, you think about the numbers of cars since the 70s. Since when I was a kid, just
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was positive, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, at least we're still alive to appreciate what's left, right?
Exactly. Although we get FOMO when we try and photograph it.
That's true. Yeah, this is true.
But it was just really interesting to have that discussion with Georgina and other people, and realize that actually it's not something that's just unique to me, and that other people, feel the same way when they get into these situations. It's just interesting how people deal with it. And I think it's something that you learn to not overcome, but certainly manage, from my point of view.
And I find I still get it, even if I'm shooting on my own. And it's normally and even in, locations right around my house here that I shoot all the time, it's situations where the conditions are just right, where there's just this amazing sunset, you see it coming, and you're like, this is going to be good. What can I put in front of that sunset, right? Or what can I work with this scene? And if I'm in my kayak, I'm paddling around looking, okay, what can I make work? Whereas if it were a cloudy day and maybe I was playing with high key exposures, or I was trying to make something work in suboptimal conditions, rarely do I ever have that FOMO or that anxiety. It's where something happens and you're like, oh, wow, this is really, really unique. I had that recently. I was driving through a little wildlife center not far from my house here on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and there was this really cool experience, and no one really noticed it. I was, there, and there are other photographers photographing like herons and other things that were front lit, but there was this backlit opportunity with all these individual piers and gulls and terns and stuff. And when you took the image, a friend of mine who was there, Scott, who was shooting with me, he also listens to this podcast. Great guy. He's become a good friend of mine. and we met through the podcast actually. And he described it as it looked like sheet music, actually, when you were taking these images. It was very abstract, but it was a very, very cool opportunity that I jumped on when I saw it. I'm like, okay, this is special. But it was the conditions were suboptimal. It was just kind of the pattern. It was more graphic in terms of what came out of that. But outside of those situations, it's normally, if it's just a kind of a standard day and the light isn't that great, or nothing crazy is happening from a behavioral standpoint, I typically don't have FOMO. It's only when the conditions are unique or what looks like it's unique, and then I'm rushing to find a location to make something happen.
Yeah, I think it's from what you're saying, it suddenly struck me that actually this is just purely linked to expectation, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get those amazing weather conditions, you get that incredible action, you get a situation where something is going to happen. There's an event that doesn't happen very often. It might be a migration, it might be Snettisham, which we went to see the other day and we talked about. There's an expectation there, whereas if you are going out and there isn't a real plan, the weather's not brilliant, there is no expectation. So if you come back with something, it's a bonus. Whereas if you've gone into one of these situations that we talked about and you come back with something, with nothing, basically, that's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the fear of having missed out on that opportunity, which you should have produced from.
Yeah.
And that's basically the crux of it. And it's just learning to deal with that. It's getting those it's just sort of, I guess, going through the process where you have a process, if you see what I mean, to make the most of those situations and stave off that feeling, get yourself calm and centered, and try and make the most out of everything. It's going to be there, expect it to be there, harness it, almost use it as a tool. I mean, it's being nervous is a good thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Shows you care. I will say this to people when they say, "Oh, I'm nervous about this, that, or the other. I'm nervous about public speaking, or I'm nervous about." I said, "Great," because then, if you didn't care, you wouldn't be nervous.
That's right.
And I think it's the same thing.
And when you have that anxiety, your brain is hyper focused, right? I mean, it's an evolutionary aspect that we all have. That's for survival. So if you see something that's pretty amazing to shoot, you are not going to care if there's a bulldozer behind you about to run you over. You're going to be absolutely focused on whatever that composition is that you're looking at right now, that you're saying, oh, this is an amazing shot and I need to get it. So in a way, it's good and it's healthy. You just have to harness it so you can be hyper focused, and it motivates you and gives you the energy to pull through and get whatever shot you want. What you don't want to do is let that energy overcome you, and then you get stuck, or you're trying to do 10 things at once. That's when you're going to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that I don't know. It's that adrenaline rush, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah.
When you see these things happening, I can remember another situation with newt swans, common species. I photographed inside out, upside down, back to front, every which way. But every now and again, they'll do something in amazing light that you've never seen before. And I had these two, we've talked about it before, courting and mating in the most unbelievable light, backlit, mist, dawn, shafts of light, and doing it in exactly the right place. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, don't F it up. You're never ever going to see this again, or it's just not going to happen again. So yeah, but I get this calmness now that descends after I just need that. I need an initial few frames, and then I tend to get calm.
And it's something to build off of too. Once you get a couple of solid frames, and then you can kind of build from there.
Yeah,
and it makes you more
content something.
Because I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, good place to leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good conversation. And I
It
think
was.
I'm sure most of the listeners out there, they're going to recognize, hopefully some value in this conversation, and hopefully this will help them out in the field, because I think we all experience this,
Yeah.
because we all want to get great shots. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah. And it's always feels like, perhaps a weakness to admit it when you think, I get nervous about this. And I've never really spoken to many people about it until recently. And then you realize that actually it's pretty normal.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, yeah, we all feel it. We all screw up.
Yep,
But
definitely.
then there are times when, once we've learned to overcome it, we can use it to our advantage. And yeah, that's good. No, great conversation. Before we go, just a quick thank you to everybody that's bought us a coffee since the last podcast. That's much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent.
It's entirely voluntary, as we've always said. So, but if you do want to say thank you, if you enjoyed the content or whatever, then there's a link in the show notes where you can go and donate a couple of pounds, dollars, whatever, and buy us a coffee if you'd like. If not, there's no problem, and we'll hopefully meet some of you out and about, like we've been doing recently, which is good fun. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed the conversation, and we'll see you again next time.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.